For countless millennia, the Kraggoth had reigned as the undisputed apex predators of the known galaxy. Their very name struck fear into the hearts of sentient beings across 1,000 star systems. These towering bipedal creatures possessed a physiology perfectly adapted for hunting and killing, razor-sharp talons, powerful jaws capable of crushing durasteel, and a relentless, instinctual drive to consume any and all lifeforms that crossed their path. The Kraggoth's hunting tactics were as ruthless as they were effective. They would stalk their prey, blending seamlessly into the environment with their chameleon-like skin, before pouncing with blinding speed and ferocity. No creature, no matter how large or how well-armed, stood a chance against the Kraggoth's savage onslaught. Entire cities had fallen victim to their hunger, their populations wiped out in a matter of hours as the Kraggoth tore through the streets, leaving behind only a trail of broken bodies and shattered dreams. For the countless civilizations that had faced the Kraggoth's wrath, there was only one universal truth: survival depended on avoiding contact with these apex predators at all costs. The mere mention of their name was enough to send tremors of terror through the bravest of warriors. Entire sectors of the galaxy had been abandoned, their colonies left to rot, as terrified refugees fled in the face of the Kraggoth's advance. And yet, amid this galaxy-wide fear and desperation, one puzzling exception remained: the human race. Despite the Kraggoth's well-documented propensity for indiscriminate slaughter, they seemed to possess a peculiar aversion to preying upon humans. Xenobiologists and military strategists had long debated the reasons behind this curious phenomenon, but their theories remained largely speculative. Some proposed that there was something inherently unpalatable about human physiology that repulsed the Kraggoth's senses. Others suggested that an ancient forgotten conflict had instilled a primal instinctual fear of humanity within the apex predators. But the truth, as is often the case, was far more complex and mysterious. The latest addition to the team of elite human Marines tasked with investigating this enigma was Lieutenant Ava Rain. A rising star in the Interstellar Defense Corps, Ava had distinguished herself time and time again with her keen intellect, unwavering courage, and unparalleled tactical acumen. Now, as she stood at the viewport of the interstellar frigate, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars, she couldn't help but feel a deep unease settle in the pit of her stomach. The assignment before her was unlike anything she had encountered before. Rather than leading her squad into battle against a known enemy, she and her team had been given the seemingly simple, yet incredibly perplexing task of uncovering the truth behind the Kraggoth's aversion to humans. It was a mission that had confounded the greatest minds in the galaxy for generations, and Ava couldn't shake the feeling that the answers they sought would come at a heavy price. As the frigate's engines rumbled to life, propelling them toward their destination, Ava took a deep breath and steeled herself for the challenges that lay ahead. She knew that the Kraggoth were not to be underestimated. Their ferocity and cunning were the stuff of legends, and the thought of facing them in combat, even as an investigator rather than a soldier, sent a chill down her spine. But Ava also recognized the importance of this mission. If they could unravel the mystery of the Kraggoth's behavior, it could unlock the key to humanity's long-term survival in a galaxy teetering on the brink of apocalyptic conflict. The fate of countless worlds hung in the balance, and Ava was determined to leave no stone unturned in her pursuit of the truth. As the frigate emerged from the jump to sublight speeds, Ava's breath caught in her throat. Before her lay the smoking ruins of a once thriving human colony, the remnants of its defenses still smoldering in the void. Steeling her nerves, she turned to her squad, her voice calm and resolute. "All right, team. You know the drill. Let's move out and see what we can find. Keep your eyes peeled and your weapons charged. We don't know what kind of opposition we might be facing. Remember, our priority is gathering intel, not engaging the enemy." "Understood." The Marines nodded in unison, their faces grim but resolute. With a final glance at the devastation outside, Ava led them down the ramp and into the shattered streets of the colony. fully aware that the answers they sought might very well be stained in the blood of those who had come before them. The eerie silence that hung over the ruined colony settlement was almost deafening. Ava and her squad of elite Marines advanced cautiously, their boots crunching on the shattered remnants of buildings and infrastructure. The entire area had been reduced to a nightmarish landscape of twisted metal and shattered glass, with no signs of life, save for the occasional flutter of a tattered flag in the cold vacuum of space. As they made their way deeper into the colony, the extent of the devastation became increasingly apparent. Ava's stomach churned at the sight of the countless bodies strewn haphazardly across the streets. Men, women, and even children, their features frozen in expressions of sheer terror. She had seen the aftermath of Kragoth attacks before, but the scale of the carnage before her was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. "Fan out and secure the area," Ava commanded, her voice terse and grim. "Search for any survivors and gather as much intel as you can. But stay alert. We don't know if the Kragoth are still in the vicinity." The Marines quickly dispersed, their weapons at the ready as they scanned the ruins for any signs of movement. Ava moved forward, her senses heightened, her mind racing with 1,000 unanswered questions. Why had the Kragoth chosen to attack this particular colony? And where were they now? As she rounded a corner, Ava suddenly found herself face to face with a small group of trembling civilians, the sole survivors of the massacre. Their eyes were wide with fear, and they clung to one another as if their very lives depended on it. "Please, you have to help us," one of them, a young woman, cried out. "The Kragoth. They came out of nowhere." And her voice trailed off, choked by sobs. Ava stepped forward, her expression softening as she tried to reassure the terrified survivors. "It's all right. You're safe now. We're here to help. Can you tell me what happened?" The woman took a deep, shuddering breath and began to recount the horrors they had witnessed. "We were just going about our daily lives when the alarm started blaring. At first, we thought it was just a drill, but then the screams started. The Kragoth, they came pouring in from every direction, tearing through the streets, and..." She paused, her face contorted with anguish. "Oh God, the things they did to our people." Ava felt a chill run down her spine as the woman's words sank in. The Kragoth's brutality was the stuff of nightmares, but to witness it firsthand must have been an unspeakable trauma. She reached out and placed a reassuring hand on the woman's shoulder. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that," Ava said, her voice laced with genuine empathy. "But I need you to tell me, did you happen to see what happened to the Kragoth after they finished their attack?" The woman shook her head, her eyes glistening with tears. "No, we hid as soon as we could. We didn't see where they went." Ava nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. She turned to one of her squad members, who had been listening intently to the exchange. "Corporal, gather the survivors and get them on board the frigate. Have the medical team tend to their wounds and prepare them for debriefing. I want to know every detail they can provide about the Kragoth's attack." The corporal saluted and quickly ushered the civilians away, leaving Ava alone in the eerie silence of the ruined colony. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she might find as she continued her investigation. As Ava made her way through the devastated streets, the scene only grew more horrific. Kragoth claw marks scored the walls, and pools of blood glistened in the faint light of the distant stars. It was clear that the attack had been swift and merciless, leaving no survivors in its wake. Ava's heart sank as she stumbled upon the charred remains of what had once been a bustling marketplace. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burnt flesh, and the ground was littered with the twisted, mangled bodies of the colony's inhabitants. She closed her eyes for a moment, sending a silent prayer for the souls who had been lost. Just as she was about to move on, a faint sound caught her attention. Ava's eyes snapped open, and she instinctively reached for her sidearm, her senses on high alert. Slowly, she advanced toward the source of the noise, her boots crunching on the debris-strewn ground. And then, to her utter astonishment, She spotted a lone figure huddled in the shadows, trembling with fear. It was a child, a young boy, his eyes wide with terror as he stared up at Ava. "Please," the boy whimpered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't hurt me." Ava felt her heart constrict, and in that moment, she knew that her mission had taken a sudden, unexpected turn. Ava knelt down slowly, keeping her sidearm holstered as she tried to appear as non-threatening as possible. The boy's eyes darted around nervously, and Ava could see the sheer terror etched across his features. "It's all right, I'm not going to hurt you," Ava said, her voice soft and reassuring. "I'm here to help. Can you tell me what happened?" The boy hesitated, his gaze flickering between Ava and the devastation that surrounded them. Finally, with a trembling voice, he began to speak. "The Kragoth, they came out of nowhere. We didn't even have time to react before they were upon us, tearing through the colony. My parents, his voice broke, and Ava reached out to gently place a hand on his shoulder. "I'm so sorry," Ava said, her heart aching for the child's loss. "But can you tell me, what happened to the Kragoth after the attack? Where did they go?" The boy frowned, his brow furrowing in confusion. They just left. After they finished, they just turned and walked away. I don't understand why they didn't kill me too." Ava felt a chill run down her spine. The Kragoth, the galaxy's most feared predators, had spared a human life. It was nearly unthinkable. She knew she had to investigate further, but first, she had to ensure the boy's safety. "All right, listen to me," Ava said, locking eyes with the child. "I'm going to get you out of here into safety, okay? But I need you to stay close to me and do exactly as I say. Can you do that?" The boy nodded, his eyes still wide with fear, but Ava could see a glimmer of hope in them as well. Slowly, she rose to her feet, taking the boy's hand in her own. "Stay close," she murmured, and together they began to make their way back toward the landing pad where the Marine squad was gathered. As they emerged from the ruins, Ava's eyes immediately fell upon the towering figure of the Kragoth hunter. The massive bipedal creature stood motionless, its gaze fixed on the group of survivors. Ava's heart pounded in her chest, and she subtly pushed the boy behind her, shielding him from the apex predator's view. For a long, tense moment, the Kragoth and the Marines stared at one another, the air thick with the threat of violence. Ava could see the muscles in the Kragoth's powerful legs tense, as if it were preparing to pounce. But then, to her utter astonishment, the creature let out a guttural roar and turned, retreating back into the shadows of the ruined colony. Ava blinked, her mind struggling to process what she had just witnessed. The Kragoth, the galaxy's most fearsome predator, had had the chance to eliminate them all, and yet it had chosen to simply leave. What the hell just happened? The Marine corporal asked, his voice a mixture of confusion and disbelief. Ava shook her head, her gaze still fixed on the retreating Kragoth. "I don't know," she admitted, "but we're about to find out." Without a moment's hesitation, Ava turned to the corporal and issued her orders. "Gather the rest of the survivors and get them on board the frigate. I want a squad of your best men ready to move out in 5 minutes. We're going to follow that Kragoth and see where it leads us." The corporal nodded, his expression grim but determined. "Yes, ma'am. We'll be ready to move out on your order." As the Marines scrambled to carry out their tasks, Ava turned her attention back to the boy, who was watching the proceedings with a mixture of fear and awe. "You're going to be safe now," she told him, giving his hand a gentle squeeze. "But I need you to stay with the other survivors until we return, okay? Can you do that for me?" The boy nodded, his eyes still wide with uncertainty, but Ava could see a glimmer of trust beginning to take root. "Good," she said, offering him a reassuring smile. "Now, I got some work to do. Stay close to the Marines, and they'll keep you safe." With that, Ava turned and strode toward the waiting squad, her mind racing with 1,000 questions. What had caused the Kragoth to spare their lives? And where was the apex predator leading them? As the Marines fell into formation behind her, Ava felt a familiar sense of determination settle over her. Whatever answers they found, one thing was clear. The mystery of the Kragoth's aversion to humans was about to be unraveled, once and for all. The squad moved swiftly and silently, their boots crunching on the debris-strewn ground as they followed the trail left by the retreating Kragoth. Ava led the way, her senses on high alert, her fingers poised near the trigger of her sidearm. The memory of the massive predator's unexpected retreat still fresh in her mind. As they navigated the shattered remains of the colony, Ava's mind raced with a multitude of unanswered questions. Why had the Kragoth spared their lives? What was it about humans that seemed to inspire such a peculiar aversion in the apex predators? The answers, she knew, could hold the key to humanity's survival in a galaxy that had long lived in the shadow of the Kragoth's reign of terror. Suddenly, the squad came to a halt, their weapons raised as they encountered an unexpected obstacle, the Kragoth itself, standing motionless amidst the ruins. Ava held up a hand, signaling her men to hold their fire as she cautiously approached the towering creature. The Kragoth's eyes, once filled with a primal, unquenchable hunger, now seemed to hold a strange, almost haunted expression. It did not lash out, nor did it attempt to flee. Instead, it simply stood there, its gaze fixed upon the human intruders. Ava took a deep breath, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of the situation. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice firm but laced with a hint of curiosity. The Kragoth let out a guttural, rumbling sound, but it did not attack. Instead, it slowly turned and began to move away, its gait almost deliberate, as if it were leading the squad somewhere. Ava glanced back at her team, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Follow it," she ordered, her voice barely above a whisper. "But keep your guard up. I don't trust this creature, and I don't want any surprises." The Marines complied without hesitation, their weapons at the ready as they trailed the Kragoth through the ruins. Ava kept a close eye on the predator, studying its every movement, searching for any sign of deception or treachery. After what felt like an eternity, the Kragoth came to a halt in front of a massive, partially collapsed structure. Ava's eyes widened as she recognized the familiar insignia emblazoned upon its facade, the emblem of the once mighty Terran Confederation, a long-forgotten human civilization that had risen to prominence millennia ago. "What is this place?" Ava murmured, more to herself than to her squad. One of the Marines, a seasoned veteran named Sergeant Voss, stepped forward, his expression grim. "This was the capital city of the Terran Confederation, Mom. At least it was, until the Kragoth wiped them out over 1,000 years ago." Ava felt a chill run down her spine. The Terran Confederation, a civilization that had once spanned entire sectors of the galaxy, reduced to rubble by the very creature that now stood before them. She turned to Voss, her eyes narrowed. "Do you know what happened here?" Voss nodded, his face etched with a mixture of awe and trepidation. According to the historical records, the Terrans were the only civilization in recorded history to have ever successfully fought off a Kragoth invasion. They managed to develop advanced weaponry and tactics that allowed them to push the Kragoth back, inflicting heavy casualties on the predators. The Kragoth, in turn, retreated and regrouped. But when they returned, they unleashed a devastating assault that all but wiped out the Terran Confederation. Ava's mind raced as she processed this information. The Terrans had managed to defeat the Kragoth, a feat that no other civilization had ever accomplished. And yet, the apex predators had returned with a vengeance, decimating the Terran homeworld and leaving no survivors. But why? Ava asked, her gaze fixed upon the towering Kragoth. Why did they come back and destroy the Terrans, if the Terrans had proven capable of defeating them in the first place? Voss shook his head, his expression grim. "I wish I knew, Mom. The records are incomplete. All we know is that the Kragoth were relentless in their pursuit of the Terrans, and that they showed no mercy when they returned." Ava turned her attention back to the Kragoth, her mind working furiously to piece together the puzzle. If the Terrans had indeed been the only civilization to defeat the Kragoth, then it stood to reason that the apex predators had developed a deep-seated fear and respect for humanity. But why, then, had they spared the lives of the survivors in the recent attack? The answer, Ava realized, must lie in the secrets of the past, hidden within the ruins of the Terran Confederation's capital. With a determined glint in her eyes, she turned to her squad. "All right, team. We've got a lot of digging to do. Let's move out and see what else we can uncover about the Kragoth's history with the Terrans." As the Marines followed the Kragoth deeper into the ruined city, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that the answers they sought would forever change the course of humanity's relationship with the galaxy's most fearsome predators. The trek through the ruins of the Terran Confederation's capital was a harrowing one. Ava and her squad picked their way carefully through the debris, their weapons at the ready as they followed the towering Kragoth deeper into the devastated city. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the eerie silence was punctuated only by the occasional crunch of their boots on the shattered remnants of the once grand structures. As they delved further into the ruins, Ava's mind raced with the implications of what they had discovered. The Terrans, a civilization that had managed to defeat the Kragoth in the past, now lay in utter ruin. The fate that had befallen them was a sobering reminder of the apex predator's ferocity and determination. And yet the Kragoth's unexpected actions during the recent attack on the human colony had puzzled Ava. Why had the predator spared the lives of the survivors? What was it about humans that seemed to inspire such a peculiar aversion in the Kragoth? As they rounded a corner, the squad suddenly found themselves confronted by a massive, intact structure that had somehow withstood the ravages of time. Ava's eyes widened as she recognized the familiar design. It was a Terran military installation, one that had clearly been the site of a desperate last stand against the Kragoth invaders. "Sergeant Voss," Ava said, her voice tight with anticipation. "What can you tell me about this place?" Voss stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the imposing structure. This was the Terran Confederation's Central Military Command, ma'am. According to the records, it was here that the Terrans made their final stand against the Kragoth. Ava nodded, her mind already whirring with possibilities. Then that means we might find something here that could shed light on the Kragoth's history with the Terrans, and perhaps even explain their aversion to humans. Turning to her squad, Ava issued a series of orders. "Sergeant, take a team and secure the perimeter. We don't know what we might find in there. And I don't want any surprises. The rest of you with me. Let's see what we can uncover." The Marines immediately sprang into action, their weapons at the ready as they fanned out to secure the area. Ava, accompanied by a small group of her most trusted soldiers, approached the towering entrance of the military installation, the Kragoth trailing behind them. As they stepped through the threshold, Ava couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and trepidation. The interior of the structure was vast and imposing, its walls adorned with the remnants of ancient battle honors and commendations. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and the faint hum of long-dormant machinery. Ava led her team down a series of winding corridors, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. Suddenly, they came upon a massive, circular chamber, its walls lined with what appeared to be advanced weapon systems and targeting arrays. "This must have been the command center," Ava murmured, her eyes scanning the room with a mixture of fascination and dread. As she stepped further into the chamber, Ava's gaze was drawn to a series of display screens that had somehow managed to remain active. Approaching them cautiously, she began to study the information they contained, her brow furrowing in concentration. The data was fragmented and incomplete, but Ava could make out the outlines of a complex defensive network that the Terrans had developed to combat the Kragoth. Advanced weaponry, shielding systems, and even specialized tactics seemed to have been employed in the desperate struggle for survival. Ava's eyes widened as she realized the implications of what she was seeing. This is how the Terrans were able to defeat the Kragoth, she breathed, turning to her squad with a newfound sense of purpose. They developed technology and tactics that specifically targeted the Kragoth's vulnerabilities. That's why the Kragoth were so afraid of them. The Marines murmured in awe, their gazes fixed upon the displays before them. Ava turned her attention back to the data, her mind racing as she pieced together the fragments of information. Suddenly, a movement in the corner of her eye caught her attention. Of a world around, her weapon raised, only to find the towering figure of the Kragoth standing just a few meters away. But instead of the predatory aggression she had expected, the Kragoth's expression seemed almost pleading. Ava's grip on her weapon faltered as she studied the apex predator, her heart pounding in her chest. The Kragoth took a step forward, its massive claws extended, and Ava braced herself for the inevitable attack. But the attack never came. Instead, the Kragoth let out a guttural, almost sorrowful cry, and Ava realized with a growing sense of disbelief that it was not attacking, but rather begging for its life. The realization hit her like a physical blow, and Ava felt her knees go weak. The Kragoth, the galaxy's most fearsome predator, was afraid of them, afraid of the very technology and tactics that the Terrans had once used to defeat it. Ava's mind raced with the implications of this discovery. If they could harness this knowledge, if they could find a way to weaponize the Kragoth's weaknesses, then perhaps humanity could finally turn the tide against the apex predators that had terrorized the galaxy for so long. But as she looked into the Kragoth's eyes, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a tactical advantage. There was something else at play here, something that went beyond the simple dynamics of predator and prey. With a deep, steadying breath, Ava lowered her weapon and took a step toward the Kragoth, her expression resolute. "I think," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "it's time we had a little chat." The tension in the air was palpable as Ava and the Kragoth regarded one another, the massive predator's pleading gaze meeting the lieutenant's resolute yet thoughtful expression. The Marines surrounding them remained on high alert, their weapons trained on the towering alien, but Ava raised a hand, signaling them to hold their fire. "Stand down," she commanded, her voice steady and authoritative. "I don't believe this creature means us any harm." The Marines exchanged uncertain glances, but they complied, albeit reluctantly. Ava took a step closer to the Kragoth, her eyes never leaving the predators. "I know what you're capable of," she said, her tone measured. "I've seen the devastation you've wrought, the lives you've taken. And yet, you spared the survivors back at the colony. Why?" The Kragoth let out a low, rumbling sound, its massive head tilting slightly to the side, as if in contemplation. Ava waited patiently, her mind racing with the implications of this unexpected encounter. "Is it because of what we found here?" she continued, gesturing toward the display screens that still flickered with the remnants of the Terrans' advanced defensive systems. "Because you know we've discovered the secrets of your past with the Terran Confederation." The Kragoth's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Ava braced herself for an attack. But instead, the predator let out a series of guttural clicks and growls, its clawed hands raised in what seemed to be a gesture of submission. Ava's brow furrowed as she tried to decipher the meaning behind the Kragoth's strange behavior. "Are you trying to communicate with me?" she asked, her voice tinged with a hint of disbelief. The Kragoth rumbled in response, its massive frame suddenly seeming less menacing, more vulnerable. Ava's mind raced as she considered the implications of this unexpected turn of events. "You're afraid of us, aren't you?" she murmured, the realization dawning on her. "Afraid of what we might do with the knowledge we've uncovered here. Afraid that we'll use it against you, just like the Terrans did." The Kragoth's head dipped slightly, and Ava could have sworn she saw a glimmer of remorse in the predator's eyes. It was a staggering revelation. The galaxy's most fearsome apex predator, reduced to a state of fear and submission before a single human. Ava took a deep breath, her mind whirring with the implications of this discovery. If the Kragoth were truly afraid of humanity, if they recognized the threat that humans posed to their dominance, then perhaps there was a chance for a different kind of relationship. "What if we could help you?" she asked, her voice low and earnest. "What if we could find a way to coexist?" The Kragoth's eyes widened, and Ava could see the faintest glimmer of hope in their depths. She reached out slowly, her hand extended, and to her surprise, the massive predator leaned in, allowing her to gently rest her palm against its rough, scaly skin. "I know what you've done," Ava said, her tone laced with both understanding and resolve. "I know the pain and suffering you've caused, but I also know that you're afraid, and that you've lost something too. Something that you've been trying to regain ever since you wiped out the Terran Confederation." The Kragoth let out a soft, keening sound, and Ava could feel the tension in its body begin to ease. She took another step forward, her gaze unwavering. "What if we could work together?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if we could put aside our differences and find a way to heal the wounds of the past?" For a long, tense moment, the Kragoth and the human lieutenant regarded one another, the air thick with the weight of the unspoken. And then, slowly, the massive predator nodded, its movements almost imperceptible. Ava felt a surge of hope rise within her, and she turned to her squad, her expression both resolute and cautious. "We have a lot of work ahead of us," she said, her voice carrying an air of authority. "But I believe we may have just found the key to a lasting peace with the Kragoth." The Marines looked on, their expressions a mix of disbelief and cautious optimism. Ava could sense their uncertainty, their fear, and she knew that it would take time to build the trust necessary for this fragile alliance to succeed. But as she turned back to the Kragoth, Ava felt a newfound determination settle over her. They had uncovered the secrets of the past, and now it was time to forge a new path forward. One where humanity and the Kragoth could coexist, no longer as mortal enemies, but as unlikely allies in a galaxy that teetered on the brink of oblivion. In the weeks that followed their unexpected alliance with the Kragoth, Ava and her squad found themselves plunging headfirst into uncharted territory. The task of bridging the gap between humanity and their former apex predators was daunting, but Ava was determined to succeed, knowing that the fate of countless worlds hung in the balance. Slowly, painstakingly, they began to build a foundation of trust, using the Terrans' advanced technology and tactics as a common ground. The Kragoth, their innate fear of human ingenuity tempered by a newfound respect, were surprisingly cooperative, sharing their own insights and strategies as they worked together to develop a comprehensive defensive network. Ava and her team spent countless hours poring over the fragmented data they had recovered from the Terran Confederation's military command center, piecing together the complex web of defenses and countermeasures that had once allowed humanity to turn the tables on the Kragoth. It was a daunting task, but with the apex predators' cooperation, they began to uncover new avenues of exploration, expanding upon the Terrans' work and adapting it to the realities of the modern galaxy. As the weeks turned into months, Ava could feel a cautious optimism taking root within her squad. The Kragoth, once the scourge of countless civilizations, had become their unlikely allies, their shared goal of protecting the galaxy from the threat of annihilation, forging an unexpected bond. But just as the fragile alliance seemed to be taking hold, a new and even greater danger emerged from the depths of uncharted space. It began with the disappearance of a remote colony, its last transmission a garbled, desperate plea for help. Ava and her team, now seasoned veterans in the art of dealing with the Kragoth, were dispatched to investigate, the towering predators accompanying them as they ventured into the unknown. What they uncovered, however, was far beyond anything they could have imagined. The colony had not been destroyed by the Kragoth, but rather by a vast, technologically advanced alien empire that had been systematically subjugating and assimilating every civilization in its path. The sheer scale of the threat was overwhelming, and Ava knew that they could not face it alone. Returning to the Kragoth's homeworld, She pleaded with the apex predators' leaders to join forces, to put aside their ancient enmity, and stand united against this new common foe. At first, the Kragoth were skeptical, their innate distrust of humans still a lingering shadow. But as Ava and her team presented the evidence they had gathered, the gravity of the situation became increasingly clear. The alien empire posed a threat not just to humanity, but to the very existence of the Kragoth themselves. With a reluctance born of centuries of fear and mistrust, the Kragoth eventually agreed to the alliance, their leaders acknowledging the necessity of this unprecedented partnership. Ava felt a surge of relief and determination as they began to coordinate their defenses, drawing upon the combined knowledge and resources of both species. As they ventured deeper into uncharted space, the magnitude of the challenge they faced became increasingly apparent. The alien empire was vast, its armies seemingly endless, and its technology far beyond anything they had encountered before. Ava and her team, alongside their Kragoth allies, found themselves in a desperate race against time, fighting to shore up their defenses and prepare for the inevitable onslaught. The battles that followed were brutal, relentless, and often on the verge of defeat. But through it all, Ava and the Kragoth fought side by side, their once bitter rivalry transformed into a formidable partnership fueled by a shared determination to protect their respective homelands. And then, in a climactic confrontation that shook the very foundations of the galaxy, the tide began to turn. The combined might of humanity and the Kragoth, bolstered by the advanced technology and tactics they had developed together, slowly but surely pushed back against the alien invaders, inflicting devastating losses and gradually turning the tide of the conflict. As the final battle raged, Ava found herself standing alongside the Kragoth's leaders, their eyes meeting in a silent acknowledgement of the monumental achievement they had accomplished. The galaxy, once on the brink of annihilation, had been saved, and in the aftermath, a new era of cooperation and understanding began to take root. Ava knew that the road ahead would be long and arduous, that the scars of the past would not heal overnight. But as she looked out at the newly forged alliance, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and hope. The Kragoth, once the scourge of the galaxy, had now become humanity's staunchest allies, and together they would face whatever challenges the future might hold. The final battle had been a brutal, relentless affair, with both the human forces and their Kragoth allies pushed to the brink of exhaustion. The invading alien empire had proven to be a formidable foe, its advanced technology and seemingly endless legions of warriors overwhelming at times. But through it all, Ava and her squad, alongside the towering Kragoth predators, had fought with unwavering determination and a shared sense of purpose. Now, as the smoke cleared and the dust settled, Ava stood at the heart of the devastated battlefield, her eyes sweeping over the scene with a mixture of relief and awe. The alien invaders had been routed, their once mighty armada reduced to smoking husks and twisted wreckage. It was a victory that had come at a heavy price, but one that would be remembered for generations to come. Ava turned to face the Kragoth leaders, their imposing figures a stark contrast to the human soldiers who stood beside them. The tension that had once defined their relationship had been replaced by a newfound respect and understanding, forged in the crucible of battle. "It's over," Ava said, her voice tinged with a quiet pride. "We did it." The Kragoth let out a low, rumbling sound, their eyes fixed upon the human lieutenant with an expression that Ava could only describe as one of reluctant admiration. Indeed, one of the Kragoth leaders replied, its words translated through a sophisticated communications interface. "Your species has proven to be more resilient and adaptable than we could have ever imagined." Ava nodded, unable to suppress a small smile. "We're a stubborn bunch, I'll give you that. But we couldn't have done it without you." The Kragoth inclined its massive head, a gesture that Ava had come to recognize as a sign of respect. "And we, in turn, could not have prevailed without your ingenuity and your tenacity." Ava chuckled, the sound low and genuine. "Well, I guess that makes us even then, doesn't it?" The Kragoth leader rumbled in what Ava could only interpret as amusement, and she felt a sense of triumph wash over her. The once unthinkable alliance between humanity and their former apex predators had not only held strong, but had proven to be the key to their shared victory. As the human and Kragoth forces began the arduous task of securing the battlefield and tending to their wounded, Ava found herself drawn to a group of Kragoth elders who stood apart from the others, their gaze fixed upon the distant horizon. Approaching them cautiously, Ava cleared her throat, drawing their attention. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her brow furrowed in concern. One of the elders turned to face her, its eyes betraying a hint of something that Ava couldn't quite place. "The battle is won," the Kragoth said, its voice low and contemplative. "But the true test lies ahead." Ava felt a chill run down her spine at the elder's words, and she found herself asking the question that had been weighing on her mind since the moment they had forged their unlikely alliance. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The Kragoth elder regarded her for a long moment, its gaze unreadable. "That, human, is up to you." Ava frowned, her confusion evident. "What do you mean?" The elder let out a rumbling sigh, its massive frame seeming to sag with the weight of untold centuries. "For too long we have been bound by the shackles of our own fear and hatred. Your kind, the Terrans, and now this new threat. They have all forced us to confront the limitations of our ways." Ava felt her heart racing as she listened, her mind racing with the implications of the Kragoth's words. "So what are you saying?" she pressed, her voice tinged with a sense of urgency. Are you going to turn against us?" The elder shook its head, a gesture that Ava had come to recognize as a sign of negation. "No, human. We have seen the strength that can be forged through unity, through understanding. The path forward is not an easy one, but it is one we must walk together." Ava felt a weight lift from her shoulders, replaced by a sense of cautious optimism. "Then, what do you propose?" The Kragoth elder turned to face her, its eyes gleaming with a newfound determination. "We propose an alliance, one that will shape the future of this galaxy, a partnership that will transcend the boundaries of our past and forge a new path for all who call this vast expanse home." Ava felt a surge of hope rise within her, and she reached out to grasp the Kragoth elder's massive claw in a gesture of solidarity. "Then let's get to work," she said, her voice filled with resolve, "because the galaxy isn't going to save itself." As the human and Kragoth forces began to mobilize, Ava couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and anticipation. The road ahead would be long and arduous, filled with challenges that they could scarcely imagine. But with the Kragoth at their side, she knew that they were ready to face whatever the galaxy had in store. For the first time in centuries, the once unthinkable alliance between humanity and the galaxy's apex predators had become a reality. And as they set out to shape the future, Ava couldn't help but feel that the possibilities were endless.